Welcome, everybody, to our second podcast. So, this is our series of podcasts about the work of Dartington Service Design Lab community research team working on the LEAP programme in Lambeth. So, my name is Dawn Hart. I kind of oversee and coordinate the work of the team, and I'm going to let the team introduce themselves one by one.
Hi there, my name is Anita. I am a community researcher and I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Ella Skowron. I'm one of the community researchers, and I am looking forward to share our practice today and our experience.
Hi, my name is Natoya White. I am one of the community researchers and I live in Lambeth and I'm happy to be here today.
Great. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to talk about our experience of our second research project, which we did earlier on in this year, 2022. And the project used the technique of eco-mapping within the community. So Natoya, could you tell us a bit about what the project was about?
So, eco maps are visual tools that are used to understand how families relate to the social environment and the systems of support that are surrounding them. It is often used in social work and research to better understand how or even if support systems influences families. For example, support systems such as LEAP, it will provide insights to nurturing or disruptive connections between families and support systems. And because it describes the whole environment, all services are looked at. So some services could demonstrate a flow of resources, others could demonstrate a lack of disruptive connections, and even conflicts, so those can get mediated and many other services could be looked at.
Great. Thanks, Natoya. So when Natoya talked about the ecosystem within the families, can you give us examples of what might be part of that ecosystem?
So I think that we consider things like physical spaces, which might be free and accessible for individuals, parks, for example, children's centres, just your GP and your dentist. But we also think about more social spaces as well and social connections. So it really is anything to do with how that individual or that family connect to their environment. So that could include numerous things, libraries, for example, any kind of services, but not just services, associations through friends, through family.
And it's called an eco map. So does it actually look like a map? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's definitely a visual tool. It is a map. It's like a conglomeration of circles. We use circles, and looks like a little bit like a kind of spider web with circles in it. In each circle, we used relationship keys, and those relationship keys showed us what kind of relationship people have with different parts of the ecosystem.
Just to add to what Ella was saying, the other things represented on the eco map, I think Natoya referred to it earlier, was the flow of resources. So this gave us information about that individual's relationship to one particular area and whether actually it was a flow of resources going out from them towards, for example, looking after elderly parents, or actually staying on the subject of grandparents, whether it was a flow of resources coming in with grandparents, looking after children. Sometimes it went in both ways. So it was actually very, very comprehensive. We used color codes as well to indicate different relationships from that center bubble of each individual within that bubble, as well as the unit itself. So we got a lot of detail out of the eco maps that way.
So how did you recruit the participants?
We went to cafes, we advertised, we put it on the LEAP website and the WhatsApp groups, and we sort of encouraged participants with a £10 gift card. So we actually took participants to like cafe where they could have a hot drink and so forth.
How did the actual eco mapping sessions themselves go?
We started with practicing kind of on each other. We also, before that, we also practice on our friends and people we knew. And actually, that was very helpful because we could test the sample and get the feedback from the people we were testing with. And before we started our real interviews, we kind of knew what to adjust, what to add, what went well, what wasn't working, and that was very helpful learning curve. And then we shared with the team because we always work as a team, and by sharing our experiences, that actually fits into a better practice like next time. Yeah.
And where did you do the sessions?
That prior to doing the sessions, we all agreed that we wanted to make this process as easy as possible for the participants. And for that reason, we gave the choice to the participants as to where they wanted to meet, wherever was most convenient for them, because, a lot of them are coming with children. When you're traveling with a young child, it's not easy. So yeah, lots of people chose a cafe that was near them. People chose places that were central in Brixton. What was interesting was that we gave individuals a choice of potentially meeting at a children's centre if they wanted to, but actually nobody opted for that option. I think everybody wanted the more sort of informal cafe environment.
And also the fact that it's a public place, people maybe felt more comfortable. And also obviously the coffee is much better at the proper cafe, and lots of moms actually enjoyed the fact that they could get a free coffee and have this little time for themselves to unwind and being heard and seen.
Why was the coffee important?
Well, it's some kind of reward. I mean, we actually appreciated the time and energy, so it was just some kind of saying thank you, and it is quite attractive because like I had some moms who managed to leave their children with the dad or member of the family, and they could have this nice chat, and they could relax and like do something for themselves in a way.
So what else in terms of participants? From the participants' point of view, like Ella was saying, it was time to have a bit of a break from the children, have a coffee, relax a bit. What were the other benefits for the participants?
I think that parents to young children, and I think mums in particular, can often be quite self-doubting, and you can often think about all the things that you're not doing as opposed to everything that is going on for you and your family. And so I think so many individuals, after completing their map, were really nicely surprised. Not only did it give them insight that they didn't necessarily have, even though they're doing it all automatically, to sit back and see it, it gave them insight into everything they're doing. But it was also really validating that, well, okay, I am doing all of this. I do have all these connections. I am doing good by my child. So I think that in itself was very, very powerful for people to see.
And there's another big word that came up during reflections and listen to feedback from participants. It was therapeutic. Lots of people consider it therapeutic because sometimes people shared very private things with us, like in terms of family relationships. And some of them were difficult, some of them were developing or broken. And having someone to actually listen to them and talk to, like in a safe environment, sharing those information.
So Ella's just mentioned about people sharing sometimes quite detailed things about their environments. Any research, but particularly social research, comes with ethical considerations that you have to be mindful of. What were your particular ethical considerations around this piece of work, Latoya?
Yes. Well, before we started doing our econ maps, we made sure that we got consent from the families that whatever we talk about or whatever they put on their maps was going to be quite confidential, unless it was something regarding to safeguarding that we had to report to our managers. Then yes, of course. But we made sure that okay, this is a safe space. We're private. We also allowed participants to withdraw if they feel uncomfortable to speak. We also mentioned that it was
it was anonymous.
yeah. So that was how we went about with the contents.
And I just wanted to add to what Natoya just said there, which was that obviously ethical considerations are incredibly important. And part of that is ensuring that the individual can put their faith in you and their trust in you to open up and to be honest. As community researchers, the beauty of it is that we are so embedded in that community and we share lived experiences with our participants. And I think for that very reason as well, it really makes it easier to build that rapport for participants and for them to trust us as well.
Were there any limitations to the project? Anything that kind of didn't go as well as you might have hoped?
So we felt like we reached out to more like communities for moms. Like there was like more mothers this time around in our second project. We only had one dad, and we just felt like where we advertised, it was like more like moms communities, and that was a kind of one of the limitations. And also we really in the first project we really enjoyed talking to dads. This time we were actually hoping it would be more like mixed groups, but so that was one of the limitations, I guess. Yeah.
Could you have accessed more dads if you'd had more time?
I think we potentially could have, because some of our participants actually came to us through word of mouth through existing participants. And I think if we had longer for our process, then that word of mouth perhaps would have got round a bit more.
You mentioned that people revealed quite a lot to you about their own sort of personal lives. Some of that might have touched on your own personal experiences as well. So as community researchers, though, when you're sort of being exposed to these kind of conversations, how did you look after yourselves emotionally?
So it was interestingly, the eco map made me wanted to do my own eco map. I wanted to have a massive map I put on my fridge and I look at it every day to see how I spend my time. So it was I think it's a very special tool that we use to look at our time and how we really live and who supports us, who we go to for support, who, whether it's families, friends, whether it's services. But I think for me, I protected myself when I came back to the meetings and I was given opportunities to speak about my week, how it's going, how, who we've been reaching out to. So in that way, the team will come together and we will all share our experiences.
Just in addition to that as well, I wanted to raise that as community researchers, we need to be aware of safeguarding strategies as well. And by safeguarding, I mean that it should, thankfully, none of us encountered this during any of our sessions, but should an individual say something which raises to us within an interview a safeguarding concern for either them or their child, just knowing that we knew what to do gave us confidence to, be able to continue with that session and make sure that, we were prepared for them to be as open as possible. But it's really, really important to have that safeguarding strategy in place. And we're looking after ourselves as well by knowing that we're familiar with what we will do.
And I also feel like we are such a good team, and we always have each other. So every meeting, I think we all feel comfortable reaching to each other as individuals and also as a team. And always, all our meetings are very open, and everybody feels very safe to share. If during the certain interviews we got triggered in any way, or if it was sometimes maybe a bit too much emotionally to handle. We all have like different support network. So apart from work colleagues and our team, we also have friends and we also have supportive environments. And that's why we felt confident that we can handle any conversations, knowing that we've got this backup and the support network.
I think that another thing that gave me confidence, I just wanted to add this, was the fact that we worked in pairs. So I was always either backing up my colleague or my colleague backing me up. So that was a thing for me.
Particularly important if you help a parent carry a baby upstairs. as I think somebody had to do in one of the interviews as well. So it's like keeping it real, isn't it? Yeah.
Distracting children as well. We had to do that a lot when children got a little upset, for example, or mum was trying to draw the eco map and entertain the child at the same time. We had to make sure that we were there on hand to be able, you have to be flexible and multi-skilled. And I think it was Ella who said it really nicely once. Did you say it was really messy or something? And it was like, yeah, that's it, messy life experiences.
So we're talking about the process at the moment. We won't really go into detail about the findings, but maybe if you could just give examples of a couple of highlights of the findings. What was interesting that came out of the analysis?
I think lots of maps were quite similar in terms of, okay, we are all families, we are all human beings, we share the same experiences. And so mostly the strongest relationships were with the family, friends, and schools. Like if people have all the children who were in primary schools or secondary schools, this is how they connected. It was like a big hub for communities and connections. And obviously, all the parks and open spaces were very important for connections, but because they are free and very open-ended and most common and easy to access. Also, places of worship came up quite a lot. That's people's close communities as well.
What about sort of families? You encountered quite a lot of people who had families living away, didn't you?
Yeah, that was quite a big also part of it, that lots of people who were, for example, not born here, they were immigrants in our area. They had families who lived abroad, often quite far. And we felt like what people share with us, it was quite a big problem if it comes to raising family in London, because normally they felt that they could have much more support if they had a family in place or, connected to the place where they lived.
Also, I think there was a financial aspect of that, because I think in London, what came up a lot was that one of the barriers to connections was cost, basically, of engaging in various activities. And one of the enablers was actually having grandparents to hand to provide free childcare. And I think that a lot of the frustrations from some of those people who spoke to us who had families abroad or even in this country, but, living further away, was that, okay, well, I don't actually have anyone here to look after my kids. I can't afford childcare. That is inhibiting. It limits my connections.
So, and finally, knowing what you know now, hindsight's always a wonderful thing. If another team of community researchers was going to undertake an eco-mapping project, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, we've got quite lots of advice, I think, because we've got quite lots of experience, and also I believe we are such a reflective practitioners, like researchers. So we reflect a lot and we share a lot with each other. What would we say is like being always staying open-minded and inclusive, accommodating, because people have different needs, and being prepared and well organized and working as a team. It's very important. And then, have strong time boundaries. So it's like two-sided, like being flexible and open-minded, but then have in mind the whole structure and stick to it. And being assertive and straight to the point, so we don't waste time, our time and people's time. And we've been always ready to help, and like that comes with being accommodating. So basically, we were like very good team, and because we are also mothers, and there's nothing like we haven't experienced before. We were very, very well blending all our skills and being multitasking, and we did actually very well.
I'd also like to say that one of the things that you should be really mindful as a community researcher, and it's going to sound really obvious, but I'm going to say value and respect your participants. Get to your venue, your space ahead of time. Make sure you set up ahead of time. We had lots of tools and materials for this project. We had a big pad of paper because the eco maps were set out on a big piece of paper. We had all our coloured pens, we had our iPad. We needed to make sure that there was enough space on that chosen table, or at the chosen venue rather. And so that when the participant arrived, we were there, we were ready, we were set up. And that is a really good start to an interview, because I think the participant already feels like, okay, this person values me, rather than kind of coming in and like kind of setting up while I'm there. And also, I would say on the subject of time, was just respecting as well that we had promised a 45 to 60-minute session, and making sure that we wrap up in time as well. And that again shows that we respect that individual.
Okay, so what I would say to any new researchers is, point taken, be ready to learn. You will be educated, because I thought I knew my community. I thought I knew what was happening. I thought I knew how many support system there was. I thought I knew, but being on this project, especially how we project number 2 took us back to project number 1 around connections.
And I think one of the other really important things to mention here is being non-extractive and not taking away from participants. And I think this was actually a prime example of doing the exact opposite, actually, because all the participants came away, or almost all of them came away, feeling like they had been given to, because they'd been given space, they'd been given time, they'd been given our ears, we listened to them, and we actively listened as well and responded appropriately. But very importantly, they had this visual eco map, and they had ownership over it all as well, and they took a copy away of that eco map. So I just felt it really important for any community researchers just to be mindful of not taking away, and giving as much as you can.
Yeah, like Anita mentioned before about respect, and also we need to remember about not being judgmental in any way, and support participant in any way. And like Anita also mentioned, the ownership, giving them ownership. So like sometimes sitting back, unless they need prompts, we're just sitting back and listen to the story with the open mind, and not being judgmental. And also just giving a real life experience. One of my participants, she was such a lovely lady with a very, very cute boy. So when they came, I tend to explain what the eco mapping is about, and I often show people other examples from the previous interviews, so she could actually see how it looks like. And when we started her map, she was obviously very engaged and excited. And after we finished it, she kind of started comparing her eco map with other people's, and other people's maps were like full of connections, full of circles. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, like we don't do that much actually as a family. I feel like we are maybe a bit lazy. We prefer to play and be with our child at home more." And so I actually quickly jump in and assured her that, "Oh, no, it's not being lazy. It's just if this works for you, and this is what you need, this is your family's needs, then it's perfectly fine." And I could see that she was like very relieved. She kind of giggled a little bit, and yeah, I could actually see like that those few words of assurance impact on how she felt afterwards. And yeah, it's just remembering not being judgmental, because different people have different needs, different families need different things. Yeah, that's very important to remember. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time this morning. Thanks for your input. Maybe if we just say one kind of final word to thank everyone and check out.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn, for facilitating this. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope that this has provided some really useful insight for some other community researchers out there.
Thank you, everybody. It's been such an empowering session, and I'm happy that we have this opportunity doing this podcast to share with the wider audience. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast, and I hope that it will inspire you somehow. Thank you very much, and see you on the next podcast.